Hi students, welcome to the class. Today we are discussing about features of 8051 and pin configuration of 8051. Okay, so we can look some features of 8051. The first point is 8051 has a 8-bit CPU optimized for control application. So the size of CPU is 8-bit and it has two memories, that is ROM and RAM. ROM deals with program memory and RAM is data memory, and ROM has a size of 4K bytes on chip program memory and it has a 128 bytes on chip data memory. So if we want extra memory, we can connect externally to the microcontroller, but it has an on chip memory of 4K ROM and 128 bytes of RAM. Okay, it has 8-bit data bus and 16-bit address bus. It's important. It has the data bus of 8051 microcontroller is 8-bit and it has an address bus of 16-bit. And also 64K program memory address space and 64K data memory address space. Okay, now 32 general purpose registers or each of 8 bits sizes, 8 bit size. Then it has a on-chip clock oscillator, and this clock oscillator has a 1 microsecond instruction cycle with a 12 megahertz crystal frequency, and it has 32 bidirectional I/O lines organized as 4 8-bit ports. So it has 32-bit bidirectional I/O lines, that is input output lines. These 32-bit input output lines can be divided into 4 ports: port 0, port 1, port 2 and port 3. Each port are 8-bit port. Okay. It has a one full duplex serial communication port and two multiple mode 16-bit timers or counters are used, that is T0 and T1. The two timers are used, that is it's of 16-bit, that is T0 and T1, and it has 5 interrupts. Among these 5 interrupts, 3 are internal interrupts and 2 are external interrupts, and there is an reset pin also. Then next, the address and data bus are direct by our IO ports are byte addressable and bit addressable. Okay, so it can take a byte at a time or 1 bit at a time. Okay, these are the main features of 8051 microcontroller. Okay, then next, this is the 8051 pin diagram. It has 40 pins, that is 20 pins in the left side and 20 pins in the right side. It is a 40 pin DIP, that is dual inline package, and active low means it will set when logic is 0, or it will inactive when logic is 1. So it is active when logic is 0 and it is inactive when logic is 1. So these are the 40 pins of 8051. So the first 1 to 8 pins are reserved for port 1. Then next, the 9th pin is RST, that is reset pin, not to reset 8051. From 10 to 17, another 8-bit port is there, that is port 3. It is multifunctional. It has alternate function too. It will discuss it later. Then next, 18 and 19, we have oscillator signals. In these pin XTAL1 and XTAL2, we are giving oscillations, that is crystal frequency, etc. 20th pin is reserved for ground and 14th pin is reserved for VCC. Here we are giving plus 5 volt. Then next, 21 to 28, we have port 2, that is it's also multifunctional. Along with the input output transmission, it also deals with the address bus too, that is higher order of address bus, that is A8 to A15. Then we have 29th pin, that is program status enable. We can discuss each in coming sections. Okay, then 13th pin we have ALE, that is address latch enable. Then 31st pin is EA, that is external access. This address latch enable is used for this port 0, because port 0 we have address and data AD, that is AD0 to AD7. Here address and data are multiplexed together. So at a time any of them is used at a time, once address is used, otherwise its data is used, it can be determined by ALE. Okay, if ALE is equal to 1, we are using address bus in port P0 to P7. If ALE equal to 0, we are using data bus. Okay, then next 39 to 32 or 32 to 39, it is reserved for port 0, and 40 we have VCC. So port 0, port 1, port 2 and port 3, and we can these 4 ports are bidirectional 32-bit input output port, and each port are of 8-bit. Okay, so we can discuss each pins detail. Okay, then first functions of pin. Then first pin is power supply pins, that is VCC and ground. Now we have ground for 20th pin and VCC for 14th pin. Here we are giving VCC of 5 volt. Then we have pins XTAL1 and XTAL2, that is a crystal oscillator pin. Here we are giving an external clock pulse signal. For generating internal clock signal, the crystal oscillator is connected at these 2 pins. So in order to generate the clock signal, the crystal oscillators are connected in these 2 pins XTAL1 and XTAL2. It will produce a clock signal of frequency 12 MHz or 11.0592 MHz for serial communication. Okay, so that's about the pins XTAL1 and XTAL2. Then we have the pin RST, that is reset pin. It is used to reset 8051. It is 9th pin. Okay, then we have EA bar, external access pin, that is 31st pin. EA, external access pin. This is an active low pin, EA bar, that is EA bar equal to 0, then it is set active by the programmer, and internal program memory ROM is completely ignored, and only a program stored in external ROM to be executed. Then if EA bar equal to 1, here this pin is inactive by the programmer, that is here we are only using the internal ROM for data storage purpose, etc. After the usage of internal ROM, we are using external ROM. Okay. EA bar pin is an active low pin. So if it is active or it is set EA bar equal to 0, at that time we are using external ROM. If it is inactive, that is EA bar equal to 1, then we are using internal ROM. Okay. Then next, ALE address latch enable. I have already discussed that ALE is used for selecting address and data bus. Here address and data bus are multiplexed together in port 0. Okay, so to demultiplex the multiplex lines AD0 to AD7, we are using address latch enable. This is done by a latch with the help of ALE signal. Okay, now if ALE is equal to 1, this perform the latch, the bus carries address bus. If ALE equal to 0, this informs that the bus carries data bus. It is used to enable the latching of the address. Okay, so if we want address as the in the latch, we want to make ALE as 1. If we want data, we want to set ALE equal to 0. Okay, then next is program store enable, PSEN, that is store enable. It acts as a read signal for external ROM. So this program store enable, if it is enabled, then only we can read the data from external ROM, otherwise we cannot read the data from external ROM. Okay, then next is port P0, P1, P2 and P3. The 8051 has 32 IO configured in IO pins. It configured as 8-bit parallel port. This port P0, P1 and P2 and P3. Each port has 8 bits. At 8 pins of each port is PX0, PX1, PX2, PX3, PX4, PX5, PX6 and PX7, where X is port number. So X will take as port 0, port 1, port 2 or port 3. All four ports are bidirectional, and also each port will be configured as input or output. Okay, so each port is used as input or output. We can perform a byte operation or a bit operation in each port. Okay, we can take a byte at a time or a bit at a time. All port pin have alternate function except the pin of port 1. Okay, that is port 1 is dedicated only to IO port. Okay, we know that there are 4 ports. Each port have alternate function. Here port 1 has no alternate function. It is only used for input and output purpose. That is in order to receive data and transmit data. So we are using port 1 only for receiving data and transmitting data. But why we are using port 0, port 2 and port 3 not only for receiving and transmitting data, but also it has some alternate functions too. Okay. Okay, each port consists of latch, an output driver and an input buffer. Okay, now we are discussing about the alternate functions of port. So, port 0, port 2 and port 3 have alternate function. From the figure it is clear that what is the function of port 0. Port 0 has two functions. First function is it work as it is used for transmitting and receiving data, that is it work as input and output port. Also it contains address and data multiplexed together. So that is the function of alternate function of port 0. It carries multiplexed address or data lines. A0 to A7, that is lower 8 bit of address, and D0 to D7, that 8 bit of address are multiplexed into AD0 to AD7. In any other operation, data and address are not issued simultaneously. Here data bus and address bus are not used simultaneously. By looking address latch enabled, we are using address and data. Okay, to identify if the bus is carrying address or data, we check ALE signal. If ALE is equal to 1, then we are using address bus. If ALE equal to 0, then we are using data bus. Okay, now port 2. What is the function of port 2? Okay, from this it is clear that port 2 not only carries act as IO pins, but also it carries address buses too. Okay, so that is the function of port 2. Port 2 carries higher order of address lines A8 to A15, and also it is used to transmit and receive data. Then port 3. So in port 3, each pin have its own function, so it is multifunctional. So port 3, port 0 to port 7, each pin has different functions. Okay, so we can study each one. Okay, one by one. Then P3.0 is a receive serial data. It is used to receive serial data, that is RxT, and P3.1 is used to transmit serial data. So it is used as serial port for 8051. Okay. Then P3.2 and P3.3 is used as interrupt pins, that is INT0 and INT1. INT0 is external interrupt to 0 input, and external INT1 is external interrupt to 1 input. Okay, used as external hardware interrupt of 8051. If both occurs at the same time, INT0 has higher priority by default. That is, the external interrupts will come through these pins, that is INT0 and INT1. In some cases, two external interrupt comes at the same time in the pin INT0 INT1. By default it is given that INT0 has higher priority. So the interrupt in the pin INT0 is taken first. After that the interrupt 1 is taken. Okay, the interrupt in the INT1 is taken. Okay, then next P3.4 and 3.5 is two timer ICs, that is external timer 0 input and external timer 1 input, T0 and T1. Okay. So to provide external clock into the timer for triggering. In order to give external clock to the timer, we are using these two port P3.4 and P3.5. In order to trigger timer 0, we are using T0 pin, and in order to trigger timer 1, we are using T1 pin. Okay. Then P3.6 and 3.7 are used as control signal for external RAM. Here WR bar means it's an active low pin which is used for write, external RAM write signal, and RD bar is external RAM read signal. It is used to read and write the signals from external RAM. Okay. So these are the functions of each pins in a 8051 IC. So that's all about today's class. Thank you.